Welcome back. The dreaded tax deadline is fast approaching, and as usual, there are plenty of reminders and tips out there so you don't overlook and lose out on deductions. Joining us with some valuable advice is Michael Karu, CPA from Levine, Jacobs & Company in Livingston. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Eric. Thank you.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what people should do. If they have waited till this very last second to file, you should be asking yourself, why did I wait so long, right?
Oh, absolutely. First thing people have to realize is that accountants, like everybody else, are under a lot of pressure to meet these deadlines. So with the deadline this year changed to April 18th, thanks to a holiday down in DC, we get a lot of people who think that it's a lot longer to file.
Oh, sure, I've got an extra 3 days.
Yeah, well, those extra 3 days, like everybody else, we really don't want to work those extra 3 days.
Well, as it is, you're already working 14, 15 hours a day, and it just gets worse, I suppose, as you get closer to the actual tax deadline. And people got to wait in line. If you already have X number of clients already lined up, that you've got to get through their returns.
Oh, absolutely. As is the case with most firms, you have a lot of clients coming in. Some come in early, which is wonderful, some somewhere in the middle, and then you have a whole load who think that they're the only client you have and that April 15th is their filing day.
But they are the only client. All right, so if they are coming to the party late, what do they need to bring to you? What do they need to keep in mind as they're getting ready to do their taxes?
They need to make sure they have everything. So like our firm, like many others, we send out an organizer. Many clients don't look at it, but all they have to do is make sure that the documents that they've gotten from the banks, the brokerage houses, the mortgage statement, real estate taxes, etc., are there. And if they're in a partnership somewhere, make sure you have the K-1. So by looking at the organizer, you can see what you did the prior year and have a pretty good idea of what you should bring with you.
Who should consider filing for an extension?
Anyone can file for an extension. It's really just an extension of time to file the return, not to pay the tax. And people get those issues confused. So if you don't have any documents, someone may be in a partnership and the form hasn't shown up, or the beneficiary of trust and the same thing, or they're just a general procrastinator. Tell us. We're very happy to file an extension, but we still have to run a calculation to make sure they're not going to owe taxes, because they do have to pay it and pay their first estimate if necessary for the coming year.
Now, what do you do if you're going through all of your paperwork and you realize, wait a second, I'm missing a piece of paper here, I'm missing some important documentation that I'm going to need?
It depends what it is. If you can't find your real estate taxes, let's assume you're fortunate enough to have paid off your mortgage and you're now paying the real estate taxes directly to your town or city. You can call them up. They are very obliging. They'll look it up by either block and lot or by address, and they'll tell you exactly how much it is. On the other hand, if you do have a mortgage, you can call the bank. If you're missing a 1099 from a bank, call the bank. It's really that simple.
All right, now let's talk about investments, because this is the time of year when people are trying to figure out what they can, I don't want to say manipulate, but in essence, they want to take advantage of gains and losses when it comes to stocks.
Okay. You have a couple things. First, you have the right to choose which stock you sold. An example is, let's assume you owned 1,000 shares of ABC stock, and you sold 100 shares during the year. Well, you have the right to earmark which 100 shares you sold. So if you've been buying them over a lifetime, you can pick the ones with the highest basis. Now, there are some changes, some major changes, because starting in 2012, brokerage houses have to keep track of the basis of the stock. So just about everybody who's gotten who has a brokerage account will have gotten a form from them asking, how do you want us to treat this? Do you want the right to select, or do you just want to do it first in, first out?
Now, what about when it comes to not individual stocks, but something more along the lines of a mutual fund?
You still have the same right, but you have to make sure that you tell the mutual fund company what you're selling. Otherwise, they will calculate a basis. Also, mutual fund companies do what's called averaging. So if you've been sending $50 a year, $50 a month to your favorite mutual fund for 20 years, and they've been calculating the basis, they're not going to say that you sold, one share from, 1987 and one share from, 1988 and so on. They're just going to give you an average for all of it.
All right, let's talk for a moment, because let's face it, there are so many things that people need to scrape together last minute. What about IRA contributions?
IRA contributions are due by April 18th this year if it's a deductible IRA. So if you're going to make it, send it in. That's one of the problems that we have. Somebody says, well, I want to make a contribution, but I'm not sure I can afford it. Well, you have to do it before you file your tax return.
How many people, how many clients do you actually see taking advantage of that at the last second?
Probably about 10%. You know, our firm does about 2,500 returns, you know, scattered through a lot of tax preparers, but we do have to deal with it on a regular basis.
What would you say the biggest tax changes, or the biggest change in the tax code this year that people need to be aware of so that they don't miss out on it?
Well, remember that there aren't that many changes because most of them got reverted back. The biggest problem that we've had is because of that reversion, everything was delayed.
So people couldn't actually start giving you their materials until a little bit later this year.
Right. We're mandated to file everything electronically, unless the client walks in and says, no, I definitely don't want to do it. The IRS had said, we cannot accept anything till April 14th. February 14th.
Yep.
And as such, everything started getting backlogged and people didn't send us the materials. Now, the other difficulty was that 2 years ago, the IRS gave a 15-day extension to all the brokerage houses. So people who have accounts at any house, instead of getting their materials in the beginning of February, are now getting it between the 20th and 28th of February.
All right, and we're going to have to leave it right there. It's great to see you. Thanks for your advice and for your tips, and plenty of coffee right now, and hopefully you get a lot of sleep after tax season's over this year.
Thanks,
Thank you
Eric.
so much for being here. All right, and if you have any questions or comments about today's interview, send them to me at itsyourmoney@news12.com. It's Your Money. We'll be right back right after this.